looks like for dental hygiene enrollment, there was a dip, a significant dip in 2020. There was a significant dip in 2022. The hygiene wages have gone up dramatically over the last 5 years.
This is Dental All-Stars, where we bring you the best in dentistry on marketing, management, and training.
Welcome to Dental All-Stars. I'm Alex Nottingham, founder and CEO of All-Star Dental Academy. And with me is Rachel Wall, the president, the founder, the consultant extraordinaire of Hygiene, Inspired Hygiene. Because I have hygiene on my brain. Because we're going to talk about hygiene shortage. Is it real? So we have Inspired Hygiene's Rachel Wall. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah.
It's good to be back.
Yes, you're a staple of All-Star Dental Academy.
Thank you.
We love you and what you stand for and your company, Inspired Hygiene. So this is a big issue, shortages. I hear so often, I don't have a hygienist. I can't find a hygienist. We have a hiring service at All-Star Dental Academy. And that's probably our biggest request is help me find hygiene. And we find every position in the office, but hygiene is the toughest to find. It's the golden goose, whatever, out there. So what is going on with hygiene? And just to kind of set the tone here, we're just gonna have a discussion and talk about what we think is going on. I know you have some numbers, but there's a lot happening with respect to that. So give me a bit of a background. Let's just talk about it. What's going on, man?
So this has been a challenge for the dental industry, for the last 5 years. I think that the pandemic actually brought this to a head, brought a lot of things to a head, right? It just amplified, it amplified in dental practices where there was great communication. The communication just got better for the most part. You probably remember we had practices where the dentist was like giving, every other day was an update to the team, like here's what's going on, and they were all pitching in together. And in practices where the communication was very poor, it was almost non-existent. The door shut, nobody heard from anybody. It's like, where do I still have a job? What's going on? Right. So there were, during that time, a number of dental professionals that retired, that left the industry. There were some that left for a while and then came back once they felt like the environment was, one that they wanted to be a part of again. And what we've seen in talking to, practices all over the country is that the good news is that there are a lot of practices that have a very stable hygiene department, despite maybe some turnover and shakeup over the last few years. Things are, in a lot of practices, are seeming to stabilize, but they've had real challenge. And we'll share, Alex, you chime in, but just want to share some observations of what we're seeing around this. And also, as we know, because of supply and demand, the hygiene wages have gone up dramatically over the last 5 years. And some of that needed to be reset. Some of those, that increase was necessary and was something that was long overdue. Some of it has gotten to an extreme level. And hey, I'm all about, if the value is there, then the compensation should be there to match it. And so I think the conversation a lot of times where it gets a little sticky on all sides of the table, right, with the dental professionals is the value that's being delivered by the individual and by the practice to the team, is it matching the compensation, or is it an even trade-off? So a lot to kind of unpack there. I don't know. Where do you want to start, Alex?
Well, I always like to start with the problem,
Okay.
right? And kind of what we're seeing. So we know it's a problem. I mean, and just kind of illustrating what the issue is, what's also making it worse.
Yep.
So, I mean, I have a lot of dentists that they're doing their own hygiene because they can't find a hygienist.
Yep.
And so I think the question we were considering is it real? That is, there a hygiene shortage?
Yes.
And the statistics bear that there is. So you can share some statistics in a moment.
Okay.
And then the other issue is, what can we do about it? How can we mitigate it? Because of the other area that you were talking about, we're both talking about, is office culture and training. It helps, right? That will be one area we can talk about. It doesn't mean it's your only solution, because I have a practice that's just in a really bad location. And she's amazing and she invests in her team, but just can't get a hygienist that wants to even live there.
Yeah.
That's another situation.
Yeah.
So let's start then first with the data. What is some of the data that you see? Again, it's not all encompassing, but it's interesting to start.
So my source for the data is CODA, which is the Committee on Dental Accreditation. So this is the committee that gives accreditation to dental schools and dental auxiliary schools. And so you're going to link to this in the show notes for anybody that wants to go and peruse that. There's a lot of data there. It looks like for dental hygiene enrollment, there was a significant dip in 2020. There was a significant dip in 2022. The good news is it looks like it's increasing. There are some dental hygiene programs that have increased seats, we'll say, for lack of a better term, in the program. I know there are some dentists that are doing some grassroots efforts to expand or add additional hygiene schools in some states. And there are a lot of different solutions flying around. So I would encourage, dig into some of that CODA data. Look at some of the ADA Health Policy Institute data as well on hiring. It does look like the respondents are saying it's slightly less difficult to hire hygienists than it was about a year ago. So that's good news. And then I would say also, things like the Dental Post, salary survey. We saw that over the last couple years. It says a third of dental hygienists are planning to retire in the next 6 years. So that's frustrating. Now, what I don't know is, do we have the same number of licensed hygienists as we had before? But, what I'm observing is a lot of hygienists are working fewer hours than they did prior to the pandemic. So if they were working 4 days, maybe they're working 3 days now. The other thing I will say is, when I graduated dental hygiene school in 1991, you either worked clinically or you taught. There really were not a lot of other options. It was very rare to have hygienists in other options, unless it was public health, which I consider clinical. But now, I was just talking with the director of sales for Vivardis, and he's like, yeah, we've hired, I don't know how many, 15 sales, associates, and a good number of those are hygienists. There are hygienists that are doing any number of things in and out of the industry, from remote, administrative services to teaching to consulting. Like, all of these different things. Are a lot more opportunities for hygienists outside of the clinical realm now than there were in the past. Which means, to me, to satisfy the clinical need, you need to graduate more hygienists. The other thing that's happening is increased popularity of the Dental Compact Act, which is a compact. You're an attorney. You can explain this better than I can. But essentially, it's a compact that multiple states join. And the states, if they get enough states in there, which I think they're up to 15 now, that this compact can become a reality where hygienists wouldn't have to be licensed individually in every state. They could move from one state to another of those states that are in that compact. And so I think that's going to create flexibility for hygienists. Hopefully it increases the recruiting pool for dental practices. I would think that would be the case. And then the other thing that's happening that I'm not crazy about, but hey, dentists are business owners, and business owners are going to find solutions to their business problems. And so I do believe that there are some states that are considering changing licensing requirements for hygienists and changing the requirement for hygienists to be graduates of an accredited program. So just keep an eye out for those types of things. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of variables on levels of education in that type of program because the programs that have been in that method in the past really rely heavily on the dentist for the education in the clinical practice. So that's kind of where we are. And then the question is there truly a shortage? I will tell you, like you said, anecdotally, we're talking about this in the pre-show is, we talk to practices all over the country, and I know for a fact many of them have a very healthy culture and they're having a very difficult time finding hygienists.
Even with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that says that, that's the control variable, that the
Yeah.
fact that those good practices are still having it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find, I mean, I don't know if it's obvious, but that those that have a worse culture are having a harder time than those that do have a better culture? So does culture and training help?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I believe it does help. But then you've got to educate your pool of what you're doing. So I would say, yes, it helps. I came across this quote by James Clear that I used in a program I taught last week, and it says, "The world is big, but industries are small." And essentially, the quality of your work will become known, and your reputation is everything. So whether that is a practice that, it has a toxic work environment, or that is an individual provider that is out there in the community, temping at multiple practices and not bringing their best, or, having an attitude that's not one of teamwork, that's going to get around. And, those things do get around. Our dental communities and are small. And so, yes, I think absolutely those things impact ability to hire and hireability. And then I think training and investing in the team and culture absolutely makes a difference. But here's the thing is, potential team members are not just going to know that you're working on that. And so it would be good for us to talk about some ways that practices can get that message out.
I like that.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard that there's temp agencies with hygiene, and that some hygienists prefer that to be involved with the temp agency. So whereas because again, like you said before, there were really only two options. Now there's multitude of options that they can do.
Yes.
Work less, just temp. I don't have to deal with the practice and all that, and they can do where that goes.
Yeah,
So that's out there as well.
it is.
Okay, so if you were to kind of build a framework to help, what would be some of the steps, or that would, this is, listen, got Inspired Hygiene, got also Dental Academy. What can we do
Right.
to help them find a hygienist?
Yeah. I would say first step is communicate with your team that you currently have. So really sit down and identify what you're doing well as a practice, why they stay in your practice, what do they love about the culture, what could be improved about the culture and communication, so that you're building a strong foundation for which to bring in new team members. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I would say, if you have that great culture and you have a really tight knit team, share that. It amazes me still, in 2025, when I go on to a practice's social media, or Facebook, and I just see stock images one after another, right? Or there's not been a post. I have come across some what appear to be very progressive practices, and they haven't posted since 2021. So it's necessary to market for team now as much as it is to market for patients.
That's
And I know that All Star believes that, and you guys have an incredible hiring program, and yet, if the practice has no presence in the community from a staffing standpoint, it makes that job a lot harder, right?
Yeah, I like what you said. To build on what you're saying, social media is incredible. I don't think that social media is like the only way to attract like patients, but I think social media can hurt you if you don't have a presence.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people communicate that way, and it's almost like saying we're not for sale, we're not open,
We're not open.
taking patients. Yeah.
Like, are they still open?
And also, if we're looking to attract great talent, I mean, that's at the end of the day what we're doing. How do we attract great talent? One of them is dental assistants. In the numbers you were showing me, which was really interesting earlier, actually dental assistants were we're seeing a shortage there too. They may not be as difficult of an issue because you can get them accredited quicker,
Right.
or there are ways you can utilize people, work around it.
Yep.
But hygiene seems to be more of the problem.
Yep.
But I think, so talk about our hiring service. I definitely would, because I think what happens is that offices, it's like anything in a recipe. If you skip a step, it doesn't work well. And so, we have to say, what are the principles that work, and you follow those principles. And it's hard to stick with principles. It is when you're nervous or you're constrained,
Desperate.
whatever it is. But just try not to have you get in the way. Realize your limitations.
Yeah.
Like for me, my patience is sometimes an issue, and so I work on being more patient or having people coach me on that. But it is a weakness. You watch that. So I'd say like our hiring service is a great tactic, and one of the barriers to that is, well, why am I going to pay somebody to help me? I'll do it myself. Well, is that the best use of your time? Are you most skilled doing it? Same thing with coaching from our end, right, Rachel, with yourself and our coaches is like, it's asking for help and look at it about putting a team around you that can help you, right? So I think that's number one, or not number one, part of what you're saying, get your team in order. Now, with that, what we found with our hiring service, and we're proud of this, that sometimes we don't even hire the hygienist. They find it from within. So we start the process and we put it out there and they post it on social media. We encourage them. We post it on different job forums. But we also encourage the team. And then sometimes the team knows somebody and they find, or that somebody just walks in, they want to, that's fine. We don't care if we get it as long as we get the ball moving. We don't need credit. We just want it done. And they're happy. So the point is that I think what you're insinuating is if we can galvanize our team, they know people. It looks like a place you want to be. And I'll leave you with this as well as a foundation. You have to pay people enough where money is not an issue. So if you start trying to negotiate, I mean, you don't want to be strong-armed because you need a hygienist, but what the pay is, you pay them well. And then you got to be, and then how do you keep them? How do they stay? Is by having a great culture and so on. But I think it's a great point on social media. People you want, and again, we're talking about hygiene, but you want people that want to be there. And it's part of something greater than yourself.
And so illustrate that by posting photos of maybe you did a give back day as a team, right? You did a free dental day, or you went and volunteered as a team at the food bank. You have lunch. It was a beautiful day. Like today was a gorgeous day in Charlotte in February, and everybody, is sitting outside having lunch. Take a picture. Show that your team loves to be together and do things. Highlight your technology. Show that you have current practices, and that, when you do training, take pictures, post that when your coach comes in. Share those things so that you're painting the picture for someone from the outside of what it feels like to be part of your team. And then have a specific shout out or specific post on your social media. We'd love to have someone else join our team. Like we're looking for a business team member, or we're looking for a hygienist. Like, don't be afraid to post that on social media. You never know. We had a client who's, one of their patients' niece was a hygienist and wanted to move to the area. And so they hired somebody that way.
A friend of a friend. You never know where. You never know where.
No, they share things and things just kind of get out there. So yes, I think first and foremost, focus on communication, relationships, and really being willing to have the tough conversation of what does the team feel is great with the culture and what is not so great. And then intentionally work on those things and allow them to see you working on those things. I think another thing, and we have a document on our website that's free on inspiredhygiene.com under free resource guide. It's called 17 Tips to Attracting a Hygienist. So that's a good guide to have too, is be flexible. Be flexible and willing to do job share. So I think we all have to recognize that, today in 2025 is different than it was in 2015 or 2020. We have to accept the changes that have come in our businesses and our communities, and then just figure out the best way to apply these changes and embrace them. So, you may not have a 5-day-a-week hygienist. You might have 2 hygienists that are willing to job share and each work 2 days. And if they both seem like they're fantastic fit, then why not embrace that? It is absolutely possible to train, and empower and have part-time team members that when they're there, they're giving 110% and they are fully supportive of your practice and your processes and philosophy. So I would say be flexible.
I like
That's
that.
another one.
That's a really good one. That's very good. Because, I mean, this is always, you want to take an inventory of yourself. What am I doing where I'm creating an unnecessary barrier to be part of the practice, right? And that's
right.
that's a great one. I love definitely thinking outside the box. So job share, love it. That's a good one.
Yeah, unintentional barriers, things that you might not think of, like if you're not able to work 4 days, please do not apply. Well, I've seen that on ads. So you've just eliminated a lot of people. You brought up team members that are working for staffing companies. And yes, this is absolutely happening. I have to think that some hygienists, maybe not all of them, but some of them will get tired of that all the time and want to kind of find a home practice, you would hope. However, there likely are, and I actually did this for 3 years when I worked at the dental school at UNC, is I worked as a long-term temporary. And so I was there 4 days a week, but because of, I was in my 20s and I wanted to be able to travel, I would kind of plan my schedule and then I'd take 2 weeks off. And I didn't get paid, but for me at that point in my life, I didn't have, responsibilities other than my job. And so now we're seeing that style kind of come to play with some of the staffing companies that are offering benefits, that are offering, the team members are full-time or they are employees, W-2 employees of these staffing agencies. And I think that there's ways that in dentistry, we're going to have to develop a mindset and ways to work with that and to see that as an advantage and to maybe figure out ways around that because, the hygienist has traditionally been such a key piece of the relationships in the practice because they see patients so often and spend so much time there that if you can develop a relationship and have a really great place for even some of these, temps to come in, that maybe you can develop a long-term relationship. And maybe you say, hey, I respect the fact that you want to have this flexibility. What can we do to have this be a regular place that you'd like to visit?
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of the best of both worlds for the hygienist. So how can you make that the best of both worlds for the practice as well? Can you maybe adjust your schedule to where you have days that are more conducive for a lot of hygiene appointments, right? So doctors maybe not doing as big of cases, and maybe you structure your schedule so that the days that the doctor's doing big cases, there's no hygiene patients there at all. So there's different ways I think we're going to have to learn to work with this and work within our new normal.
I love it. That's pretty helpful. All right, so those are the steps that we kind of talked about in terms of how to find and keep. I'm just going to apply to any
role.
In terms of, so we talked about making sure you have a proper baseline, that you have a great culture, that you find out why people want to be there or not. We were talking about hiring. You can use a service. All-Star is one of them. Also posting on social media.
Yep.
And then galvanizing your team to help find. You talked about flexibility as well, which I think is key. Oh, I like 3s. Was there a 4th one?
Culture,
flexibility. Hiring, flexibility.
I mean, there's probably 10.
There's probably a whole ton, but
yeah,
I like to simplify everything.
Yeah, and I think flexibility is a good umbrella around, job share and also hygiene scheduling models. Again, we touched on that a bit, but, consider assisted hygiene. Consider, I was talking to one practice that's in a remote resort type area. And so we talked about, she's like, we're coming up with all these different ideas of having like a hygiene day. I've seen this done in some of our client practices in the past for pedo, where they just have a pedo day, and they do it a couple times a year, like summer and over Christmas break, and it's all hands on deck. They have the hygienists and assistants working together. They get a lot of patients in. You could have once a week. This practice in particular had been searching for a hygienist for about 6 months. She has redone her ad to make it super attractive. She's set up like a really great living space for somebody. Like, she's just doing everything she can to recruit. They have a great culture, and she's just having a really hard time because it's not a heavily populated area. It's lovely, but it's not somewhere where a lot of people can afford to live, and that kind of thing. So they're going to we talked about them doing a day a week of everybody seeing hygiene, including doctor, and everybody's working with an assistant. So you have a hygienist and an assistant, another hygienist plus an assistant, doctor plus an assistant, and you've got 6 rooms.
So doctor is doing hygiene too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you is that I'm seeing that some dentists are doing hygiene. Is that a workable model in the interim? Could you get like also associates that will do that, or how can you utilize dentists to
I think it is a viable solution in the interim. I will tell you, I don't, and this may be a limiting belief for me, but I don't see how that could be ideal long term. Yeah. But there are some dentists that have no hygienist and they like it, and it's working for them. So I mean,
get to know the patient pretty well.
Anything can work. And I think, Alex, that you hit the nail on the head with that comment is, if you're in an area where you're having a lot of guest hygienists coming in and you don't have that hygiene team that's there every day in and day out, the responsibility really lies heavily on the doctor and the rest of the team to build that relationship. So
what I have found is that the dentists that do hygiene, they have found some good positive side effects. Like, they really get to know the patient quite well. And I will say this, one of the areas, and this is a whole nother topic, that we help a lot of practices get off insurance or less reliance on insurance. If you're not reliant on insurance, let's say you're at a network, then you have a potential to spend more time with the patient. You could do hygiene, and you might end up with the numbers saying, if I'm not giving insurance 40%, I can spend a little longer, do the hygiene in the interim, right? Because I can spend more time. My hourly production goes up. And then look, I mean, you're building rapport. You're the dentist right there. Hey, we can do the crown, we can do the filling, whatever it is, right then and there. That could be something. Again, it's not ideal, but what you said, we have to adapt in the different spaces and find, what it is that we can make that work.
And that certainly is a recommendation that we bring up anytime we see a practice that's heavy in network and they're booked out 6 months and, they've had a hard time finding a hygienist and they're ready to kind of release some of those things. I would say the flip side is also true, that if you're out of network, then you likely have room to pay hygienists a little bit more than if you're in network, because you can hit that profitability point easier. And I will say, from a profitability standpoint, I mean, again, that's a whole nother concept or a whole nother podcast that we've probably already talked. I feel like we've talked about that before.
Well, we got to do it again.
Yeah,
and again.
It absolutely is possible for hygiene to be profitable. Now, there are some extreme examples, but in general, yes, it is still possible, even at the compensation level that a lot of hygienists are at now. So I think kind of circling back with all this is, yes, I believe there is a shortage. It could be regional. It may not be as significant in certain areas.
Which is true. I see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it is necessary for dental leaders to make sure that their practice is attractive and a great place to retain team members and just to work for everybody's sake. Because when there is tension and friction, patients feel it, team feels it, and it just doesn't allow you to do your best work. So I think the key thing is we've all got to work together, right? Division and friction does not, that tension does not serve anybody well. So the more we can come to have some really healthy and respectful conversations about things, accept some of the new normal, but also stand firm in your clinical standards, and work together, I think we will get through this, and we'll find a new way of being the best that we can be.
That's a beautiful podcast. Well said from the hygienist of hygienists, Rachel Wall,
Thank you.
president and founder and CEO of Inspired Hygiene. Thank you for being on our show. We'll have you
Pleasure.
many other times. We love having you. All right. So for those who want to learn more, I would direct them to inspiredhygiene.com. You have coaching, you have online training, Perio Bootcamp, a number of great programs for anybody that is interested in anything hygiene. Make sure you have Rachel Wall's company, Inspired Hygiene, on your speed dial, and you check her out. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you for
Alex.
joining us, Rachel. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you. And thank you to your team for all you do and support our industry. It's amazing. So appreciate you.
You're welcome. Remember, everyone, to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, social media. We talked about social media as well. Get episodes as they are released. Share with your friends. And until next time, go out there and be an all-star.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Dental All Stars. Visit us online at allstardentalacademy.com.